Okay, I think I am ready to start. I started the recording of the lecture, so I have to inform you, and I will explain you why. Actually, I am also teaching in streaming. Before we start, do you mind if we make a round of introduction? I start with you, and then I will introduce myself. So please start. I just would like to know your name, your bachelor degree, and where are you from, and whatever you think is interesting to let me know. So please.
So I'm Adam, and my bachelor degree, master's degree is in coastal engineering.
Okay.
From Nigeria, and
Okay.
what I expect from the course is doing more things, especially that is going to be coastal land design, so maybe I'm going to use some software to design structures.
Okay. And offshore engineering, you're attending.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, please.
I'm Daniele, I'm from Italy. My bachelor degree was in environmental engineering in Bologna.
Sorry?
Environmental
Okay.
Bologna.
Bologna.
I'm studying graphics engineering here in
Yeah. What is the branch of offshore engineering yours? Environment. Okay, please.
Caterina, I'm from Modena.
Okay.
And I graduated with environmental engineering in Bologna. I'm studying offshore engineering environmental.
Environmental. Okay, very good. So please.
Yeah, I'm from Sweden. I'm for since exactly. Yeah, so I've been following courses.
Okay.
And yeah, I spent a lot of time in the Swedish Harbour.
Okay.
And
Yeah, your bachelor is in environmental engineering.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Please.
I'm Thomas, my bachelor in engineering here, and now doing masters in civil engineering in Bologna with curriculum in Harbour.
Okay, okay.
I'm the only student.
The only student of civil engineering. And the curriculum of civil is, you said?
Harbour engineering.
Harbour. Okay, good. Very good. Perfect.
Alberto, my bachelor degree is environmental engineering in Bologna. I'm from Ravenna, and my curriculum is
environmental engineering. Okay, very good. Perfect. So about me, my name is Alberto. I am a civil engineer as background, and civil engineer, but my branch was hydraulic engineering. But it was a kind of hydraulic engineering more focused on environmental engineering, because actually my thesis was on water quality models of rivers, and also my elective exams, elective courses were focusing on river engineering and river hydrology. Actually, after a degree, because at that time we didn't have a split between bachelor and master, so it was a 5-year long course. After the degree, I took a PhD by chance, actually, and the PhD was in hydrology, essentially in hydrology, statistical hydrology. And then I decided to stay in the university first as a postdoc, and I started making research, and also in parallel I made some professional activity because I was not sure to succeed in getting into the university, so I tried to keep my feet in 2 pair of shoes. I'm not sure if you know this saying in Italy, is in the scarpe. And then I started to make research, and then I had the opportunity to get a position as an assistant professor at the university, and then I decided to stop with my professional activity, or let's say, now I'm still doing some professional activity, but as a consultancy for the university, for public administrations. I stopped at any individual professional activity, and I continued as a researcher and a teacher. And now my time is split between research and teaching. You may know that in the university, who works in the university internationally has 3 missions. And one is teaching, the second one is research, and these are compulsory actually. And the third one, which is compulsory, is the so-called third mission, or public engagement is more easily understandable. Public engagement means not only speaking to the public, but also to make consultancy activities for administrations, public administrations, water boards, etc. And so I am split into these three kinds of work. Actually, teaching is, I am very motivated. It's a strong passion for me, so I am teaching a lot. Just this year I reduced a little bit because I have a research project that is ongoing that requires a lot of time. And I am making research, and once again, research is compulsory if you work in the university, and for advancing in the career, professors are evaluated based on research. There is only teaching is not really evaluated, and also at the international level, I could say. And my main research field is hydrology. Hydrology is the science of the water cycle. And then I started recently to focus also on coastal engineering, harbour engineering, coastal areas. And because hydrology is related to harbour engineering, coastal engineering, because, you know, the ocean, the sea is part of the water cycle. And therefore, today in the research activity, we tend to adopt a very broad vision. So it's no more the time to be focused on a very specific issue, like river engineering or river research. It's too focused. Today, the attitude, the general attitude is to motivate the researcher to take a very broad vision. And therefore, I adopted a very broad interpretation of water cycle. So, please. That's it about me. And may I know, because there are 3 persons who joined and skipped the self-introduction. So, if you can introduce yourself.
I'm Victor. I am from Barcelona and studying
environmental engineering or offshore engineering environment?
Offshore engineering.
Environment. Okay, your bachelor was in?
Naval engineering.
Naval. Oh, okay, good.
I'm Giulia, Gattuini, and I'm from Bologna, and I studied environmental engineering in Bologna.
Okay.
Now, environmental assurance.
Okay, perfect. You are missing. Can you please introduce yourself? Yeah.
I'm Susan, and I'm from Turkey. I'm studying about marine
Say again because they were making noise. Your bachelor degree is?
marine science.
Okay.
I'm from Istanbul.
Okay. And you are subscribed to offshore engineering? You are attending offshore engineering? Okay, very good. I never had in offshore engineering in this class so many students, so this is something encouraging. Usually it's at most 5, and yeah, today you are 9. Okay, very good. Okay, so what are we talking about here? We are talking about harbour engineering, of course, and in particular, this subject on harbour engineering is taught, delivered by me for 32 hours, and then Professor Archetti 16 hours. I think we are running in parallel, I think. Did you start already with Professor Archetti? Okay.
We're going to start tomorrow, but she said that there's a class tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, okay. Anyway, we are running in parallel. Of course, we are in touch, and therefore, basically, we will use the same Teams channel, etc. So, what are we talking about here then? We are talking about ports and harbors, but also we are talking about coastal engineering, some applications of coastal engineering. In particular, to give you an example, Professor Archetti is talking about port layouts. I will talk about forcing estimation for port design, so we are trying to integrate in a more or less perfect way. But we will talk also about coastal engineering, because ports are included into coasts, and of course you cannot ignore the engineering of the coast if you focus on the engineering of the ports. The course will be not very, how to say it, We are not developing any practical project, so we are not asking you to make drawings of some part of the ports. We are focusing on the broad port environment. So we will focus on the port structures, indeed, how to design them. But as I said, we will not develop a real world project, a design project. We will make exercises, but the exercises will focus on the estimation of the forcings, on the estimation of the loads for ports, for some specific structures. We will never finalize to something really getting to the final design, to the executive design. And this is because, of course, we have limited time, and we want to start from the big picture, and then we will work with the other professors like geotechnical engineering, and who will be more focused on the design of individual structures. Also keep in mind that designing a port is a very broad issue. It's not only a single structure. So it will be very limited if we said, let's focus on the design of a beam of a berth, or a wall, or a cut-off wall of a berth. It would be very limited. Because, as I said, we are committed to give a broad overview of this environment, of this large environment, including many structures, including many forcings, and therefore we prefer to focus on the big picture of the port and the related costs. But of course we will make, as I said, exercises, and the exercises are also meant to be motivation for you to learn more language, programming languages. So I will indeed develop exercises, but I am not using, for instance, Excel to make computations. I prefer to use open source software like Python, like, if you know it, the R language, which is similar to MATLAB in a way, because we also want to promote the use of open source resources, and therefore we want students getting the skill of the digital skills that are today required in order to make engineering. And in our experience, very often you need some additional support in order to get more acquainted into these digital skills. But I will also adapt to you. This is why I asked for your background, because of course I will ask you whether you are already an expert. For instance, some of you may say, look, I'm a very good programmer already, I know Python, I know MATLAB perfectly, I know, and then I may adapt a little bit. But it will be a continuous interaction between me and you. So, I started the recording because I want to anticipate to you that I am also teaching in streaming. I am teaching in streaming because it is easy for me, given that I want to make available the videos of the lectures, it is easy for me to use Teams like I was teaching in streaming, and because I can get the video later on, which I will make you available, and I will tell you where you will be able to find the videos. This means that in principle, okay, you are not formally required to attend lectures in any case, okay? So just keep in mind, some students ask me, is it compulsory to attend? No, it's not compulsory. Neither online or in physical presence. You are not required. I'm not taking any name of people who attend the lectures. But of course, you have the option of attending in physical presence. You may also decide to attend online. It doesn't make any difference for me. It doesn't make any difference for your final assessment. It doesn't really make any difference. Of course, but don't consider this a limitation of my preference. I am very happy to have students in physical presence because I really believe in the interaction, which is not easy because usually you are very shy, but I will try to stimulate you. I think the interaction is really also motivating the teacher in using a different tone. It's a different story to look at the screen without getting any feedback from the students. Just looking at your eyes, I understand if I become too boring, if you need to rest a little bit. Online, this is not possible. And at the end of the story, online teaching, I think it is a very good opportunity if the students are busy, have some problems in joining the classes. It's indeed a very good opportunity. I wouldn't go back to the previous stage. Just keep in mind that I started 10 years ago to record my lectures, so I was really a fan already at that time of online teaching. So I wouldn't go back to the previous situation. On the other hand, I think the ideal solution is perhaps a hybrid, like some lectures given online. For instance, when we make exercises at the computer, sometimes it's better to work online because you can see my screen more easily and the interaction is easier when you just need to make computation together with me. But on the other hand, the physical attendance, I think it is more motivating. So I am teaching online, but just be aware that I prefer if you are here. But this preference doesn't mean that I elaborate any pre-evaluation or any prejudgment of your motivation, your whatever, okay? So it doesn't make any difference. And maybe I don't make any difference at the exam if I see a face for the first time, absolutely. Okay, so just beware, and if you think that it may be an opportunity in some cases to attend online, that's fine, okay? I am required to be here, so when I will teach from here, unless the university allows me to do that. We broke the eating system in Bologna, so I taught on Monday online because the university required me to do that, but otherwise I will be here. Okay, let me just start by giving you some logistic details. The first hour, more or less, will be dedicated to explaining to you how the course works, okay? This is my website where you can find, it is very easy, it's www, okay, it's not here, let me just write www, you can drop it, it's not necessary, albertomontanari.it. I am using a personal website because given that I am a fan of open teaching, open research, open everything, I found the website of the university too rigid. I couldn't include in the website of the university everything I wanted to include to make available for students. And also the website of the university is open to students only. I wanted to make something that is really open. So it will remain available after you concluded your studies, until I survive, hopefully. And it is organized, my website, in two sections, teaching and research. Forget about research for now. And the first link in teaching is Lectures Harbour Engineering 2025. So here you can find in this page the information that I'm giving to you now. And this information will be in the video. So if you need to refresh your mind, you can refer to the video or this page if you need to be reminded about logistics, etc. So first of all, this is the calendar of the lectures. Just 1 second, okay? Today is Feb 19, and I have only one reservation for this lecture. It may be that I need to cancel it. I will tell you next week, okay? I will make an effort to be here, but actually I have to attend a meeting in Trieste, 4, 5, 6, so I need to check if the trains allow me to travel from Trieste and back to Trieste on March 5. If not, I will cancel the lecture and we will have another lecture April 16. Okay, this is the only doubt that I have. This should be the same calendar that you find on the web, but I'm not sure. Maybe on the web it includes more lectures because there are also the hours by Professor Archetti. I'm not really sure. In any case, please refer to my website because it will be continuously updated. If I decide to cancel the lecture here, I will remove it as soon as I decide, and we'll put here the lecture on April 16. And then I'll tell also the university, but they may take some days in order to update it. So this is the reference that I recommend to you. It's 4 hours per day, and the reason is that I am a commuter. I'm not, my office is in Bologna. My plan is to teach with 2 blocks of 2 hours, and so my plan is to start at 1:15 to 2:45, and then a break of 15 minutes, and then from 3 to 4:25, more or less, because then I have to rush to the train station to take the train. And if this setting is not convenient to you, no problem, we can discuss. I can start also at 1, it's no problem for me, and then make a longer break, or make 2 breaks. So it could be 2 breaks of 15 minutes, or a longer break of half an hour, as you like. Okay? The only thing that I am asking you, if you would like to suggest a change, discuss between you first, because of course we need at least the majority of persons agreeing in the change, and then you can discuss with me. Keep in mind that it will happen like in 3 lectures, that the second block, 2 hours, will be dedicated to exercises at the PC, which means that I am projecting some exercise or some teaching on a programming language. My suggestion for you, if you can take a device that allows you to repeat what I'm doing, like a notebook, that's perfect. Maybe also an iPad is possible. What I'm doing is basically, I think, making programs like MATLAB, and I think R is available on the pad also. I will tell you how to find out R, okay? And Python, and I think Python is available on the iPad as well, on any pad, but we will check, okay? But it is the ideal thing. Sometimes students don't want to repeat, and they just look what I'm doing. That's fine to me, it's not a problem. Because you can also, you have the video, so you can also repeat later if you're interested. It is up to you. I would start probably next Wednesday, Feb 26, with the second block dedicated to exercises. If you want to skip exercises, it's your call. They are not a subject of any question at the exam. So the exam will be a colloquium, and I will ask you questions, not exercises to make, not anything related to coding, algorithms, or whatever. So exercises are just done for your personal background, and if you want to skip them, because either you are not interested or you are already a super expert, that's fine. It's completely fine to me. You can get 30 with Laude, even if you don't know anything of what we do in these 3 blocks of 2 hours. Okay? My suggestion, of course, is to attend them. But if you are already a super expert, because I'm not really teaching at high level, I start from concepts of coding, and then I interact with you, I try to understand, but it's not very high level. So when I say super expert, I'm not meaning an expert. I'm meaning a person that already knows how to make programs in MATLAB very well, and therefore, I don't see any reason to skip, not to skip them. Okay, let me go back, because I try to, I am trying to stimulate students to interact, and you see some options that I'm proposing to students for interacting. First option, please ask questions, make comments, just try to establish with me a conversation rather than a teacher-to-student relationship, because I think it's much more stimulating also for me, and it's less tiring for me to reply to questions rather than continuously talking alone. So if you have any question, comment, this is the form of interaction, the highest priority. Please stop me, even now. If you don't understand something, I really like to be interrupted. I tell you, I'm very frank on that. And second form of interaction that usually students, okay, first, let me say, usually students don't ask questions. I don't know why. Maybe that I am super clear, maybe, but I don't think this is the reason. So just keep in mind that usually I tell students, ask questions, and you don't ask them, okay? Second form of interaction, and this one is profited by students usually. If you would like to give a presentation to the audience, this is highly recommendable. What I mean with the presentation, I mean that if you have a case study that you would like to report, you don't have to substitute it in teaching. This is absolutely not appropriate. But if you have something more to say, like a case study, like I have a case of a port that I know quite well, which is interesting. Interesting from a technical point of view. So don't get prepared just to say blah, blah, blah. Because, you know, when you talk about environmental engineering, at the international level, there is a high frequency of blah, blah, blahs, like everything should be resilient, everything should be sustainable, everything should be green, everything should be gray, everything should be black, but then there is nothing technical. And this is a problem. It is a problem in engineering at the international level, that people question the traditional way of design, like it's too impacting, it's not environmentally friendly, it's not sustainable, it's not resilient, there is climate change, so there is no resilience. So you engineers should be more resilient, more nature-based, more environmentally friendly, more and more, but then there is nothing really proposed of new. So, I mean, what you say should be interesting from a technical point of view, like there is a problem, the solution they found is, in practice, it works, it is this one, this is perfect. Or, there is a problem, what solution can we find for this, and then we discuss. This presentation should be like 5 slides, 8 minutes, ideally a case study, but not only. You may be interested in a new technique. You may be interested in nature-based solutions. If you provide technical details, this is perfect. So, for instance, how to design a nature-based solution. So, we are committed to protect harbors with natural structures. How to design them? Because this is the big question. If I make an hard structure, I have a literature on how to make the design. If I make a nature-based solution, like an artificial dune, how to design it? And so, speaking 8 minutes, you deliver your presentation, and then we start a discussion. The discussion usually is longer than the presentation. This is nice, okay? So not for the next week, but maybe in 2 weeks from now, if you are interested, just send me an email or ask me during the lecture, and we schedule it. This is perfect. Also to make the lecture more engaging, let's say, okay? Self-evaluation, I never prepared it for you, but we could do that. Like prepare a quiz on the web, and you can try it several times, anonymous, of course. Okay, so tutorials, lecture notes, how to call them. I use web pages. I'm not using PDFs. I'm not using I explain you why. I'm using web pages. Let's try to, for instance, to click on one, just by chance. It's a bit slow. So this is one important topic that we will study together, forcing estimation for Harbour design. It's a bit slow today, and let's hope that it improves. And here there is everything you can, everything you need to study for your exam, okay? In the form of a web page. Why? First, because I can use the links. Links are extremely important today. I mean, today the web, I think, is the most important sources of information for students, and then books. But in the past it was books first, and then lecture notes by the teacher, etc. Today I think it's the web, and then lecture notes by the teacher, and maybe books. Books, I often say, to make fun of my colleagues, books are dead. And indeed, I mean, today the web is the main reference, as I said. So links are important, so I can use the links. I can also use figures, link the figures, which I couldn't use in a PDF, for instance. And it is easy for me to continuously modify the lectures. At the bottom of each lecture, you should find the date of the last change, and you also find a list of references, and you find a PowerPoint presentation. Not always, almost always. What is the purpose of the PowerPoint presentation? Teaching, because you understand that I cannot teach by showing on the screen this, okay, too many words. I need a PowerPoint to teach. But please, my suggestion is don't use the PowerPoint to study. You can use the PowerPoint to refresh. But the PowerPoint is a synthesis of the web pages. And of course, some information is not there because it's a synthesis by definition. And keep in mind that what you need to pass your exam is the content of the web page. So there are no questions outside the content of the web page, okay? And the web page contains more than you need to know to pass the exam. I will try to make an effort to tell you what is explicitly required. I will also give you some examples of questions. I will tell you what are the parts that you can skip on the web page. In particular, keep in mind that we don't rely on memory. So unless I tell you explicitly, like learn this relationship by memory, please, unless I say this, if you see formulas with empirical coefficient with 10 digits or very long empirical formulas, keep in mind that Harbour engineering, coastal engineering is mostly empirical. So there are a lot of empirical formulas. And if you see an empirical formula that is almost impossible to remember, you don't have to remember it. I will tell you in many cases what you have to learn by memory and not learn by memory. In any case, it's not a stupid question, absolutely. It's a very appropriate question if you ask me, do you ask this at the exam? It's no problem at all. You may ask a question like, if you don't need this for the exam, why did you put it in the web page? Okay, and this gives to me the opportunity to introduce a concept that I really think it is important. One thing is to study to pass the exam. Another thing is to study to become an expert on the topic and to be able to say in your CV that you are skilled on a certain topic. And of course, there is a difference, because if you study to pass the exam, you have to focus on a kind of more focused preparation, which is also not very long-lasting. For the exam, you need to be perfect that day. It's like preparing a sport competition. That day, you have to be in perfect shape. It doesn't mean that you need to keep this perfect shape forever. It's a different preparation with respect to becoming an expert, where you don't need to be in perfect shape for one day. You need to be in a quite good shape for a long time. Okay, so this is why I put a lot of things in the web pages, because if you understand that something is not really something that you need for the exam, and you are not particularly interested in that topic, you can discard it. It's no problem. And the same thing for the many links that you see on my web pages. There are several links. They are, in some cases, an help for you. So let's suppose that you see, let me go at the beginning. Let's suppose that you see a term that you don't know, like cutoff. What is a cutoff? And then you click here, and you should get, hopefully, it's a bit slow, an explanation of what is a cutoff. Sorry. And here you see an explanation, okay? What is a cutoff, okay? So basically, if you see some words that you don't know, sheet pie, click there. Also, the links are providing additional information. So what is the rule that I suggest to you? If you really like a topic, and it's your ambition to become an expert on the topic, you may take the opportunity of following links, of expanding your knowledge. Okay? And also, you can take the opportunity at the exam to show that you expanded your knowledge. But there is nothing wrong, because you cannot become a super expert of everything. So there is nothing wrong if you say, Harbour engineering, really, I don't care much. I have to take this exam, but just let me pass the exam with a good mark, and that's okay. Okay, this is perfect. And then I am the first one suggesting you not follow the link unless you need them, and try to reduce your amount of study time at the optimal level that allows you to pass the exam with, with an happy outcome, but not becoming a super expert. It's your call, okay? Just keep in mind that it's important that when a person reads your CV, understand what is your motivation, your passion. So my suggestion is, on some topics, it's not too bad to expand in order that you allow to you that you have a strong interest in structural mechanics. Okay? And this is perfect. One can say in the CV, you can also put in the CV your ambition. And you can state like, I am very interested in structural mechanics and I included in my study plan the elective course of whatever it is, which where I gained an expert knowledge on whatever it is. Or you may write in your CV, I am very interested in coding with open source software. I have a very good knowledge or an optimal knowledge of Python, R, MATLAB, Microsoft Word. Okay, Microsoft Word, you shouldn't put it in the CV. But if you are an expert of using some specific software which are not, not so diffused, you can write in the CV. It's very important that a person reading your CV says, oh, this is not usual. This is something interesting. And then this is very important for your future. So try to develop some interests, some motivations, and try to gain the knowledge that allows you to put this motivation, your interest in your CV, because it makes a difference. And keep in mind that for getting a job, it's more important the interview than the final degree mark. So I always tell students, in the past, people was indeed recruiting by looking at the mark. Now it's a different story, because of the evolution of the education system, of now who is looking for a person to hire, looks at the interview, at the CV, more than the only mark. So it happens that people prefer candidates that got only 80% of the max mark, but in the CV, in the interview, there is something that is stimulating. Okay. So this is the list of the lectures. We don't, we will not have time to talk about everything. Some of these lectures are very descriptive. Today we will start with a descriptive lecture. Some of the lectures are more technical, because indeed there are some technical issues that we will discuss. We will not get to the level of a design project, but there are many technical issues that we will discuss. One thing that I wanted to tell you, and I want to, again, to stress, Harbour engineering and coastal engineering, there are a lot of empirical relationships. There is a lot of empirism. This doesn't mean that the theory is not solid. I am used as an environmental engineer, basically, to deal with empirical approaches. So what is the reason why in environmental engineering in general we rely more on empirical approaches rather than in structural engineering? And what is the reason why in coastal engineering and harbour engineering the empirical part is larger than the average in environmental engineering? The reason is uncertainty. And uncertainty means that the data, the information that you have on the sea, on waves. Most of the forcing for harbors comes from waves. And waves cannot be described deterministically. You will never be able to write a deterministic model. Deterministic means one-to-one, okay, one-to-one relationship. You have an input that generates an output, and the output is perfect. This is a deterministic model. And you will never be able to describe a wave forcing with a deterministic model. We use statistics. There is a physical basis, of course. Waves, it's a movement of mass, it's physics. So we know the theory behind it. But the problem is that input data, like wind, you cannot describe it deterministically. So there is uncertainty in the input. There is uncertainty in the boundaries. You know, for waves, the boundary is the atmosphere and the sea bottom. You cannot describe it perfectly. So the result is that you have some uncertainty. And uncertainty, you can use many ways to deal with uncertainty, but the most used is statistics. So this is why we use empirical relationship, which basically is statistics. So what we try to do is to collect data about what we want to describe. We collect data about waves, and then we fit an empirical relationship to the data. This is empirism, but this is also statistics. Statistics uses a very formal approach to empirism, but it is empirical. Empirical because it is data fitting. Okay, one thing is data fitting, so you observe something and you find a model to describe it, and you forget about the physical basis, or you may use the physical basis only in part. This is an inductive approach, means that you start from the results and you find a model providing the best interpretation of what you see. And then there is another approach, which is the deterministic one, or deductive, where you start from the theory and you apply the theory and you describe the final result. It's a different story. So most of harbour engineering and coastal engineering is inductive. We get data and then we try to simulate them. Keep in mind that we are in an engineering program, so our task is not, strictly speaking, gaining a better understanding. This is not our aim. If it is useful to gain a better understanding for making a better design, then we are also interested in getting a better understanding. But it's not our primary target. Our primary target is to produce a result, to produce a design. And keep in mind that engineers, this is something that I always repeat to my research colleagues, we have a responsibility. When we make a design and the design fails and people die, or in any case there is a damage, we are responsible for it. When we put a signature under a computation, it means that if we make a mistake, we may be called in front of the court, and we have to justify ourselves to say why we made a mistake. And if we made a mistake because it was not possible to avoid it, but we have to demonstrate it, then we waive our responsibility. But this is a different story for a researcher. When the researcher produces a result, it's not responsible because by definition science is considered to be something uncertain, and scientists are justified if they make mistakes. So it's a different story. And this means that also when we select an approach, we must be able to defend it. So I use a model, and the model turns out to be wrong. And then somebody calls me and asks me, okay, why did you select that model? And usually, it is not tenable if one says, because it was theoretically correct. It is not tenable. What we have to do is, it was the best model. And then it failed, okay, it's not my responsibility. I selected the best model. This is extremely important to understand the role of the engineer. Very good. So let's go back to our logistic details. And here you see also tutorials, links for the exercises. I mean, we will not use all of them, but this is what we will discuss about. Here in my website, you can find everything you need in terms of lecture notes, in terms of exercises, etc., in terms of information. But the same information is copied into Virtuale, which I think you know. This is Virtuale, virtuale.unibo.it. And if you go back in your page, of course, your page is not the same page that you see on the screen, which is my page. There is Harbour Engineering and Geotechnics, whatever. And here, if you click there, there is a copy of what you see on my webpage. There are links, actually. I hope they work. Let's see. For instance, this one. Okay, this one is not updated, the first one. So let me not click on it. But if you click on the second one, you should open the web page on the teacher website. And you get on my website. Very good. The first one is not updated because I think it is linked to last year page. You see 2024. I need to update it. Okay. One thing that you find on Virtuale, which is unique, I mean, it's not on my website, is the forum. So now there is nothing, of course. I will use this forum when I want to communicate with you, this forum and the Teams chat. So please, if you are not subscribed in Virtuale in my course in Harbour Engineering, for instance, because you are maybe an Erasmus and you are not automatically in, please subscribe, because if I need to quickly communicate with you, like the train is late, sorry, let's meet half an hour later, I will use Virtuale, okay? And in Virtuale, you get an email. If you are subscribed to the course, when I post a message in the forum, you get a copy by email. So it is very convenient to stay in touch. All the remaining information, it's copied my website. There is another thing that you find on Virtuale, but it is also available on my website, which is the videos of the lectures. And you will find the videos under the Panopto box. Now, of course, there is nothing. I will not use Panopto to record, I will use Teams. So I'm not sure whether you know Panopto, if some of my colleagues use it. It is interesting indeed, because you can select if you want to see my face or the slides or whatever. On the other hand, Panopto is accessible only by students at the University of Bologna, so I prefer to use Teams, which is less efficient, but on the other hand, I can put the video available to everybody. It will also be available here. Where else? The video is also available here, videos of the lecture on my website, playlist of Harbour Engineering. The playlist of Harbour Engineering is one second, is empty now, of course, because, and this is on YouTube, because it will be, the first video will be online tomorrow. This is on YouTube. YouTube has the great advantage of being available to the world, it's open. The disadvantage is the advertising, and it is very short usually, because I don't monetize, of course, from my videos, so the advertising is very short. On the other hand, it is sometimes boring. If you want to avoid advertising, go to Virtuale and open the same video under Panopto. Also, in my website, you find a link to the virtual room. Let me see where it is, virtual room. I don't see. Why is that? Just one second, because must be here. Maybe that. I didn't include it here. You find it on Virtuale. I'll tell you in a second why it's not here. Just one second. Okay, in Virtuale, if you go in the dashboard under Harbour Engineering, you see here Aula Virtuale. Okay, if you put it in English, it's virtual room. I'll say, what is the reason why I didn't open the virtual room on my website? Actually, I could include it, but keep in mind that in principle, I'm not allowed to teach in streaming because the university doesn't want it. I am a fan of online lectures, and therefore I decided to teach in streaming anyway, also because it's convenient for me to register on Teams, to record on Teams. But to avoid any problem, because there was, soon after the pandemic, the university was monitoring the teacher who resisted to teach in streaming. I mean, I'm teaching in streaming, but in physical presence. Of course, I'm not allowed to teach in full streaming, only streaming. But in principle, I am also not allowed to teach in physical presence plus streaming, because the university didn't want the students coming back in physical presence. Not online. But on the other hand, after the pandemics, I realized that some students had troubles in getting back to Bologna, especially the international ones, and therefore I decided to continue streaming. But I didn't include the link to the virtual room in my website. Now I could do that because there is less pressure by the university. So, but this is curious. It was something that was curious. The reason why the university doesn't want that we teach in streaming is basically the competition with the online university, and they want to make a difference. But on the other hand, I don't really agree with this strategy, so this is why I took the liberty of continuing in streaming. It doesn't make a big difference for you. The only thing is that, okay, but I need to remember to put the link back here. Okay, videos, calendar, exam. Let me talk about the exam and then we can start lecturing. So, the exam will be made most probably together by me and Professor Archetti. And we'll try to make the exam the same day, but in principle, we have nothing against your personal choice of giving one day Archetti and another day Montanari. Some students prefer to do that. When the students ask for it, we say, okay, that's fine. I mean, you can decide to give my part in June and Professor Archetti's in July. It's no problem. The only thing is that you have to trust us, because we cannot register the exam until it's finished. So we cannot split the registration in 2 phases. And therefore, of course, in the interim period between the two, you have to trust that we remember that you took the first part with. So for this reason, my suggestion is don't wait 5 years before, between the two. Of course, I exaggerated. Don't wait more than 1 year between the first part and the second part. My suggestion is to try to keep them close. And you have the opportunity to make them the same day. Of course, given that I have 4 credits, 4, and Professor Archetti 2, usually we make a weighted average of our evaluations. We make the exam, I ask you some questions, she asks some questions, and then we meet, and I say 30, and she says 20, okay, perfect, and we make a weighted average. So 30 times 4 plus 20 times 2 divided by 6. Is it clear? And usually we round in your favor, okay? Usually, given that you are not so many students, and given that we are not so strict teachers, we don't have any problem in our relationship with the student the day of the exam. And sometimes, of course, somebody may decline the mark. If you decline because maybe you wanted 30 and you get 26, is too low, you decline, no problem, we don't register anything, and you come the next exam. Exam dates, okay, first of all, the exam is about half an hour in total, maybe 40 minutes. 2 questions by me, 2 questions by Professor Archetti, and that's it. Exam dates and the questions, just keep in mind that, I mean, this is an engineering program, so you know better than us that it's not enough to get a general knowledge of the topic. You also need to remember some technical details, and also try to prepare the way you present, because it's important. When you make an interview, it's very important how you present yourself, so try to get trained also during the exams. The exam dates, the last day of lecturing should be June 9, 10, because it will be on Thursday, so probably it will be June 10. If I well remember, June 10th should be a Thursday. And because the last day of the lectures is June 11. So we cannot make any exam before the end of the lectures. So usually what we do is to make a first exam just a couple of days after the end, so maybe the next Monday, June 13. And then we make another call before the end of June, and another call in July, so 3 calls before summer. And then we make another call in September, usually, and another call in December, another call in the next winter session. In any case, usually what happens is that most of the students take the exam in the first 2 calls of June. And so we found that it's better to make a schedule for any call, but to become very flexible after the first 2 calls. Like if after the second call in June, only 2 students are left, then we usually tell students, look, the next call will be July 19, but if you want to take it earlier or a little bit later, don't worry. It's clear? And then very often we don't have the need to schedule additional exams in the other sessions. So last year, for instance, we finished everything by the end of July and we didn't schedule any more exams. But in any case, if you need an exam date because we forgot you, just send an email and and we try to be very flexible. Okay, for individual clarification, you have my contacts. Okay, my email is name.surname@unibo.it. You can contact me by email, and usually I resolve your question in physical presence here before starting the lecture. It's also interesting if you have questions to ask the question for everybody, if you are not shy, and we can discuss during the lectures. But if you need an individual conversation, we can set up a call on Teams, and I think this is the most useful way to do it. I think I said everything. Do you have any question? No? Perfect. Okay, so I think we can go to the first link. Okay, there is a first link which is not important. I just open it to show you a table, this one, which is derived by a Wikipedia page. Okay, just try to have a look at this, because it is quite interesting, and you know, it is a discussion on the so-called 21st century skills, which they were the subject of an interesting debate some 10 years ago. When you look at these debates, these discussions, so the table is here, and basically it shows what in these discussions were deemed to be the important skills for people working in the 21st century. When you look at this discussion, there is a lot of blah, blah, blah. And I mean, it may look something like, okay, many words, a lot of lip service, it is called like this in English. So in Italian, I would say molte parole al vento, okay? But indeed, I found that here there is something interesting. In these discussions, like the discussions on sustainability, resilience, sometimes they are really, I mean, not to the point, but I think it is interesting to make an effort to get the concept behind it, the motivation that triggered the discussion. And indeed, you probably didn't experience that, but my generation experienced a big change in education, in technical skills, because if you think 30 years ago, in 1995, nobody had access to the email. I had access to the email in 1994 because I went during my PhD in the United States, and they had this strange thing, email, what is this? But I mean, in Italy, people started to have internet at home. I started in 2002, so 20 years ago, a little bit more than 20 years ago. So it was a completely different story. There was no web. Once I met a colleague in 1995, and he said, do you know Mosaic? Probably you never heard about Mosaic. It was the first browser. There was Mosaic and Netscape. And I said, no, what is Mosaic? It's amazing. You find everything there, a lot of information. And I thought like, okay, maybe something not interesting, because I was used to use books. So the story is that there has been a lot of transformation, and also in terms of computational power. I mean, there was a tremendous evolution in the personal computer from 1990 to 2005, more or less. And then after 2005, there has been a very marginal improvement. But in these years, it was amazing. Every year, I tried a new PC and said, this is incredible, it's super fast. Because at the beginning, they were really slow, really very, very slow. So, I mean, we experienced this big change, and therefore it's clear that also education changed, and everything really changed, and also the societal setting. So I think it is interesting to try to understand the concepts and the inspiration that motivated these discussions. My suggestion is keep in mind that these habits, orientation, sometimes they change drastically in a short time. So, for instance, we gave a lot of value to sustainability from 2010, more or less, for 10 years, and then we had the Sustainable Development Goals. Now sustainability is less interesting because now we have an increase of the geopolitical tensions all around the world, and therefore sustainability is no more a priority. Now the priority is to avoid the proliferation of conflicts. And some people realize that if you have to, in a way, sacrifice a little bit sustainability in order to avoid, because you understand that if there is one thing that is not sustainable, is a conflict. So in order to avoid a conflict, maybe worth sacrificing some sustainability to avoid to be really not sustainable. So today, the top priority, also in researchers, is to avoid conflicts. It's no more sustainability. I mean, sustainability remains a top priority, but it is not the very top. And if you look at the statistics of the concern of people, what is the top concern of people? And 10 years ago, climate change was in the first 2, 3. Now it's no more in the top 5. Because people are more concerned by other things like terrorism, like personal security, like conflicts. And therefore, I mean, also the movement of thinking, the global movement of thinking, like this movement that promoted the development of new skills for the young generation, these global movements of thinking, they are also shifting rapidly sometimes. So it is interesting to look at this discussion, but always keep in mind that what are believed to be the most important skills today may change rapidly. So also in your education and in your habit, you have to learn to be very flexible, to adapt. For instance, today it is considered a very important thing, the attitude to compromise, to seek compromise. In the past, it was not so important. Okay, so have a look at these required skills, because I found that it is maybe useful to give you a direction. So for career, for instance, you see flexibility, attitude to team working, initiative, accountability, productivity, leadership. Now there is a lot of value given to leadership, which doesn't mean that you have to look too much ambitious. If you look too much ambitious, it's not a good thing. But on the other hand, even if you look too low profile, maybe that it's, I mean, people and enterprises really like the attitude to leadership and compromise seeking. Okay, so this is just something for you to have a look for your interest, but it's not really important for us. Now, let's go to the PowerPoint at the end of the story here. I need to remember to share the screen, because otherwise in the video you don't see anything. So let me share the screen. Not a big deal if so far I forgot to do that, but this problem arises when I teach online without online students, because when a student is online, usually the students say, "Professor, can you please share the screen?" But in this case, nobody's online. Okay, perfect. So let's make a premise on coastal engineering, and some of you had already a background in coastal engineering, so probably I will say something that you already know. So first of all, and let me go back to the webpage because I want to look at this figure. So first of all, the coastline is a very important environment, and in order to quantify the importance of this environment, you may look at how many people are living there. First of all, we define the coastal environment as the belt that is comprised between 0 altitude, sea level, and 100 meters. And this coastal environment, it's, you see here. And also, yeah, there is also another limit, 100 kilometers. 100 kilometers of distance and 100 meters of altitude. This is the definition of coastal environment that you find on Wikipedia. So, of course, you have also to put a limit on the distance, because 100 meters in some cases may imply that you reach a distance from the sea of 300 kilometers. For instance, if you look at the Padano Plain here, before reaching an altitude along the Po River of 100 meters, you travel for 200 kilometers. In the low course, the Po River has a slope of 0.5, I think it is 0.5 per 1,000, which means that every 1 kilometer, it goes down half a meter. So to get to 100 meters, you need 200 kilometers indeed. A little bit more than that, so probably it's 0.04, the slope of the Po River. So of course, you cannot talk in Piacenza about coastal environment. It's 200 kilometers from the sea. So you need to put a limit. So about 1.2, probably now 1.4 billions of people live in the coastal area. And the total population is about 8 billions. So it means that you have like 20% of the population, more or less, living in coastal areas. In Italy is 40% of the population, because Italy is very mountainous, because it's like that. And I mean, 40% of people, it means almost half of the population of Italy living in coastal areas. So you understand the importance. And indeed, the average density of population in coastal areas is about 3 times the global average. So you understand that the coastal areas are important, and why people live close to the coastal areas, close to the sea? Because first, it's for transportation. I mean, the sea is an excellent way of communication. Even today, in the past, you understand it was really very important. It was the easiest way to travel, the quickest way to travel, to get to the sea and travel through the sea. And in coastal areas also, it is a very favorable environment. It is also hard to defend, but in peaceful periods, it's very favorable because it's flat, there is usually a lot of terrain for agriculture, there is a lot of water because there is also groundwater and surface water because, of course, rivers are getting to the sea. And therefore, I mean, the areas that are close to water, civilization always grew up close to water, rivers and the sea. I mean, it's a very important environment from many points of view. It is so important that landlocked countries, the so-called landlocked countries, the countries in green that you can see here, are considered disadvantaged because they don't have access to the sea, and they are not many. Today, only they are less than 50, and maybe that in Wikipedia there is an updated map. But let me see if the number is changed. 44, you see, because the number is continuously decreasing. And they were 48 when I downloaded the map 4 years ago. And, but these countries are indeed considered disadvantaged. And it is Also, if you see the conflict between Russia and Ukraine now, a most important part of it is related to the occupation of the coastline in order to give to Ukraine access to the sea. And this is, these are strategic areas. These are so strategic that we have created a definition, landlocked, okay? Perfect. So, what is also other reasons for the importance of the coastline? Let me just go back to the here. There are also other important reasons. Commerce, tourism. Tourism became more and more important in the past 100 years. And before 1900, it was not so important. But now, for many coastal areas, is the main contribution to the GDP, gross domestic products. And also, keep in mind that from an ecological point of view, coastal areas are extremely relevant because they are very diverse in terms of species living there, in species, animal species and vegetal species. There is a lot of diversity. There are a lot of nutrients. So also from an ecological point of view, they are important. And we don't have to ignore the strategic value of ecological diversity. Even if we are engineers and we have maybe a bias, an historical bias towards hard solutions with structures, but indeed the green solutions that basically try to restore the equilibrium of a system. They try to restore the natural equilibrium of a system. Nature is by definition in equilibrium. It is an equilibrium that is not stable, but nature is by definition in equilibrium because otherwise it wouldn't exist. So the natural environment is not stable, meaning that it is subjected to shocks. But the reason why it resists to shock is that the natural environment is resilient, because if it was not resilient, it wouldn't exist after so many shocks. Keep in mind that the Earth was subjected to tremendous shocks, impact with meteorites, and the changes of the inclination of the Earth's axis, and nature adapted because it is resilient. So ecosystems, by definition, are resilient. So they can indeed help to re-establish the equilibrium of a system after the human impact. The human impact is unavoidable, so we don't have to live in a dream book, in a dream story. The natural environment is hostile to humans. This is something that we have to accept. It's not true that the natural environment is easy, is nice, the natural environment is very hostile. So humans have to mediate their relationship with the environment by making interventions. If you think of this land here, it was a big marsh, absolutely unhealthy, impossible to live here. The Etrurians understood that the land had several opportunities, and also they had to care about their health, and therefore drained this region. But if you left this region without any care, give to the region like 10 years, and everything would be flooded, covered by marshes, like in the origin. It's absolutely true, I tell you. And you can look at the roads, paved roads, when they are left dismissed. You go there after 2 years, and you almost don't see the road anymore. And sometimes I had some of these experiences. It's really amazing how the natural environment is strong and it's able to recover from everything. So basically, the humans have this imperative need of shaping the environment, and this has an impact. And this impact indeed may be not sustainable. And therefore, indeed, it's our task to make our living environment sustainable, and ecosystems can help a lot. So we don't have really to downgrade, underscore the importance of the ecosystems in finding solutions. In some of the cases, they are not enough. So it is another dream, not reality, the convincement that everything can be nature-based. Absolutely. We need structures. We need some intervention. We need some human impact. But on the other hand, in order to reconcile the human impact with the environment, indeed, ecosystems are important. So the coastline and the coastal zones are important. How we define the coastline? Okay, so this is interesting. First of all, you may find a synonym of coastline in the literature, which is shoreline. So let's define both of them. The coastline is defined, look at the slide, as the line that marks the boundary between the land and the sea, or the ocean, or a lake, because we can also talk about a lake coastline, by taking as a reference the high tide mark. This is extremely important because in Italy we are not much used to deal with tides because the tidal excursion is limited. But if you go on the Atlantic Ocean north of Europe, the tidal excursion is several meters, maybe 10 meters, and therefore you have to make reference to tide mark, and we take the high tide mark. Why? Because once that an environment is covered by salt water, even for 1 minute, the configuration of the environment changes, even if it is only 1 minute per year. Okay? And even if it is occupied by salt water by 1 minute, to recover the salinity, the original low salinity, takes years and years. So there is we need to refer to the high tide mark, because we have to make a difference between the environment that is never in touch with salt water and the environment that even once in a while is in touch with salt water. It's a completely different environment. And the line of separation is very thin. Don't think it's kilometers. The transition between salted environment and unsalted environment is very thin. Okay? So we refer to the high tide mark and we identify the coastline. So what is the difference between coastline and shoreline? Basically, the difference is the scale. The coastline is drawn by looking at a large areas, a large ocean, and you draw without much precision the coastline. In the shoreline, instead you zoom at it and you look at the tiny details, the tiny geometrical details. And you may think, what is the difference? It's nothing. Actually, there is a nice paradox, which is a coastline paradox, which says that it's impossible to define the length of the coastline. And let's look at here. You see, because if you change your scale, this refers to Great Britain. If you change the scale, the length of the coastline and the geometry of the coastline changes a lot, to the extent that there is a theoretical interpretation that says that it doesn't exist an upper limit to the length of the coastline. Have you heard about fractal theory? Fractal theory means that as you zoom, the geometry of a line doesn't change. So the larger is, the larger the magnification of your zoom, and the ever increasing the length of the coastline is, because you zoom and you find additional detail. You zoom again, additional details. So the coastline paradox says that it's impossible to measure the length of the coastline. Actually, it's not impossible, but you have to define the scale. So you say, okay, I refer to the scale of 1 over 100, and then I can make a measure, because of course you draw a map of Italy in a given scale, and then you go along the coastline. So this is why there are two terms, and basically when you say the shoreline, you refer to a very specific location, to a zone that is, you look at the details. When you say the coastline, you look at Italy, and you identify the coastline of Italy, okay? The coastline paradox is interesting, and given that the coastline is important, I mean the coastal areas are important, it is interesting to look at the countries that have the longer extension of coastline. Of course, you have to make it in a way to rescale it, and usually we look at the coastline ratio, the coast area ratio, which means that you measure the coastline, the length of the coastline by identifying a scale, and then you divide the length of the coastline by the area of the country. And this parameter is believed to be extremely important, extremely effective on the gross domestic product of countries. And in fact, there is a list here in Wikipedia. No, sorry. Okay. Length of list of countries by length of coastline. And of course, it measures the coastline paradox because it explains how the length of the coastline was measured. And there are two measures, one given by the World Factbook and the other one given by the World Resources Institute. And they cover a different number of countries, they use different scales, so the two numbers are a little bit different. And the table is here. And let's see, let me see if it is ordered by, okay, let's order them, okay, by the World Resource Institute. And the highland typically, of course, have the highest ratio, and the Marshall Islands have the highest ratio, and then Maldives, Bermuda, Kiribati, Micronesia, Seychelles, Polynesia, Macau, Tonga, and then we go down and you see Malta, still here we are. And let's now look at order the countries by land area. So to look at the ratio for, so Russia, you see that Russia has a lower ratio, and then Antarctica, a lower ratio. China, even lower than Russia and Antarctica. United States are also low. Italy has a higher ratio. Let's see where it is. Spain, Sweden should be somewhere here. Just 1 second. No, I missed it. Let me see. Where is? Okay. You see, Italy has 25 or 31 according to different measurements. And so you see that, for instance, with respect to the United States are between 2 and 3. But of course, we are expecting this because Italy has a long coastline. And as I said, this ratio is believed to be very effective on the gross domestic product. Okay, I think now we can make our break. Yeah, let's make our break here. During the break, I don't stop the video because otherwise I forget to reactivate it. So I just turn off camera and microphone. So when we look at your video, when you get to the break, you have to move forward. Okay, let's start again. Okay, so the coastline is a dynamic environment, and let me check if I activated microphone. Yes, it's a dynamic environment. Dynamic means that it's continuously evolving. It is continuously evolving under the effect of erosion and income of sediments. Mainly by rivers. There is also an income of sediments by wind, by human impact, but the main income is from rivers. Rivers tend to bring gravel, sand to the coastline, and their input in terms of sediment is compensated by the erosion of the sea. I think it is interesting to look at the big picture of this process, which is the geomorphological evolution of the Earth's surface. So what happens over the Earth is that there is orogenesis, which is given, for instance, by the movement of the continental plates. The orogenesis drives the lifting of the Earth's surface to form mountains. As an effect of the formation of mountains, it happens that there are zones over the surface that are placed at a higher elevation, of course. This means that when it rains or when it snows, we have particles of water which find themselves at a higher elevation with respect to others. And this originates the movement of water downstream. The movement of water originates in turn erosion, and it is a compensation of orogenesis, because erosion tends to bring back the surface of the Earth in the shape of a perfect sphere. And why there is this tendency of the Earth to get shaped as a perfect sphere? Because in this case, if Earth reached the shape of a perfect sphere, it would correspond to a configuration of minimum energy in terms of energy of water. Given that the Earth is not a perfect sphere, then we have movement of water which originates erosion, which tries to compensate the orogenesis. And this is a continuously moving process. It's dynamics. There is continuously orogenesis, and then we have continuously this action of water that is reshaping the Earth. Erosion means that we have sediment transport in rivers. And the sediment, the erosion is larger where there is a lot of energy in water, where the surface of the Earth is steep. And then when rivers get in the lowlands, we have a deposition of sediments, starting with the larger sediments. And at the end of the story, rivers only brings very fine sediments. And this is why we have, in coastal areas, in flat coasts, we have deposition of sands, while in the coasts that are steeper, where the land behind the coast is steeper, we have gravel, we have rocks. And this process originates different shapes of the coastland, and therefore different environments and different needs for the humans that want to live there. It is very useful to better understand these processes and these environments, to classify them, and this is why we try to develop a classification of the coastlands and the coastline. And any classification has limits, because we try to think about classification as very different groups of categories. And we think to assume that there is a clear and sharp separation between groups. Actually, when we talk about environment, classification means that there are also gray zones. So we have to understand classification with their useful and technical meaning. It is an help for us to better understand what's going on, but by just simply looking at what we see and looking at a coastline, at a coastal environment, and quickly gaining a kind of classification which helps us to identify what could be the problems, what could be the solutions.
Before going deeper, can we just make slightly the difference and the link between the shoreline and the coastline?
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Let me see if I can go to the blackboard. Yeah, I think, okay. Perfect. Okay, so let's look at, for instance, at Italy. Okay, so now very stupid picture. Okay, and so if we try to identify the coastline, we may go along a map of Italy at very large scale, and then, you know, here with little uncertainty, we identify the coastline, like for instance here, as this line of separation between sea and land at the high tide. Okay, but what if we decide to make a zoom, and we make a zoom here, and we expand this view here, and then you get a more refined definition, and you will see that this straight line becomes something like this. So you see that it's longer because the previous configuration derived from this map was something like this. So the result after the magnification is longer, and therefore we tend to identify this as shoreline because it's defined with larger details and in black, the coastline.
Basically, the difference is just scale.
Just in the scale. So we define the shoreline as an identification of the divide between the sea and the land at very local level. The coastline is the same divide, but at larger scale.
Then why usually when we talk about, for example, the length of the coast of Italy, we say the length of the coast and not the length of the shore to be more precise about it?
Yes, you may say, according to this definition. First of all, keep in mind that very often we use the coastline for everything. But I just wanted to be clear because if you look at the literature, there is this difference. If you look at the web, shoreline, coastline difference, the difference that is reported on the web in Wikipedia is precisely what I'm telling you. So you may say the coastline of Italy, the shoreline of Emilia-Romagna. Is it clear? Or the shoreline of Ravenna. So this is the difference. So if you say the shoreline of Ravenna, according to the information that I found, is more appropriate than the coastline of Ravenna. So you may say the coastline of the United States and the shoreline of Boston Cape Cod.
So also, when we are having a project for management of the area of Emilia-Romagna, we are talking about coastal management, we are talking about shoreline management.
Yeah, but you know, when you talk about coastal management, you are not talking about the coastline. I mean, it's a different it's a different terms of reference. I wouldn't change the shoreline management because shoreline is really, I could say, beach management. So I wouldn't use this term. But we are discussing here of language terms which are not very significant from a technical point of view. And keep in mind that from American English and UK English, there might be some difference. So I just wanted to mention shoreline because I find it very often. So I wondered myself, what is the difference? I was curious. So I wanted to report the same information to you. Actually, you don't find in my web pages the term shoreline. Because I think it is more popular to use coastline. But
so if you are talking about small scale, we are going to use the coastline.
You can, it's not incorrect. But it is, in English, in American English, I think it's more likely, if you ask an American, that he will say the shoreline of Ravenna and the coastline of Italy. But it is a language difference. I mean, it's not very technical.
Also, according to some definitions, it's going to depend on the structural line between the land and the sea. So even including the small variations, also the whole ecosystem, including the beach and the some distance from the coast.
No, we are talking about here a geometric definition. We are talking about geometry. So if you say the ecosystem, you can say the ecosystem of the shoreline or the ecosystem of the coastline. I would say coastal ecosystem. I would say this. And but once again, it's just a discussion on terminology. It's not from a technical point of view. We can say that they have the same meaning. It's the divide between the land and the ocean at the high tide. Okay, but you know, when you talk about, for instance, in Italy, we don't have a difference. When you talk about the national languages, we don't make any difference in Italian. We say la linea di costa and that's it. We don't have really a different terminology. In English, you know, it happens quite frequently that you have different terms depending on American English, on UK English. And when I talk with my colleagues, native English speaker, they say that I am too much concerned about language. They are not. They say, okay, you are Latin and you look really at the meaning of any single word. We don't care about that. You can use shoreline, coastline. And okay, so let me just go back here. I was saying classification. First, let me say that criteria to classify the coastal environment can be divided in two categories. Descriptive criteria, which look at the shape of the coastal environment and make a difference. I will give you an example soon. We can talk about genetic criteria, which looks at the way the coast was generated and identify different categories. So let me provide an example. Descriptive criteria. Our first descriptive criteria may allow us to divide the coasts in two broad categories. One is the cliffed coast. The cliffed coast is originated by erosion, typically by erosion of waves, and therefore are characterized by highly sloping or vertical transition between the land and the sea. Let me give you a picture. Here we are. Let's look at the picture first. This is the coast in Sydney. This is a cliffed coast. You see there is a vertical transition between the land and the sea. And you understand what can be the hazard here. The hazard is erosion by the sea, which undermines the stability of the coast, of the coastline. And this is a sketch. So, for instance, you see here, regarding your question on language, that is called shore face, the land that is seaward with respect to the shoreline. And shore, so the land that is seaward means that it's sea bottom. And shore is the part of land that is immediately landward with respect to the coastline. So in this case, it is called shore. It's not called coast, because it's really looking at the local scale, you know. And then you have the beach. The beach is usually is really the transition. It is the part that is covered even once in a while by water. And it's called beach. So when we say the beach, we mean this in some cases, very thin belt that is covered once in a while by salt water. It is called beach, and we will talk about later about beach terminology, because even in the beach we can identify different subzones, and we will talk about this terminology. And
because I said this because also there was this conversation between some local regulations, and the main topic was, is it a coast or a littoral?
okay.
So,
Okay. This is a language question. In Italian, I would say litorale costa, but I wouldn't say the litorale of Italy. I would say the costa, non direi il litorale dell'Italia, I wouldn't say the littoral of Italy, I would say the littoral of Ravenna, and I would say the coast of Italy, the costa italiana. But I would also say the costa of Ravenna in Italian. But litorale means really, it's like lungomare, it's really a small portion usually. We wouldn't say the littoral of Emilia-Romagna, no, it's too large. But it is really a language question.
Because as I said, it was a topic, because there was some kind of management of the cost of the city, let's say. And so for each small city, is it considered a littoral area or coastal area? So you have to know how much you are going to spend in this case.
Yeah. Usually when we talk about an area, we say coastal area. In English and also in Italian, we say area costiera. Area litoranea is not so common. But once again, it depends really on the interpretation. But these discussions of terminology, I think, are extremely important, and I tell you why. Because today, communication, also for engineers, is really an important thing. And it requires a careful attention, because when you try to gain the trust of public, which is a big problem today. Today the public has a low trust in any organized institution. So low trust in state, low trust in the medical doctors, low trust in whatever, unfortunately. And therefore, one of the main questions that often I have to face in public engagement is to gain the trust of the public. And then you have to adapt your profile to the public expectation. And if you use terms that the public doesn't recognize, it's a bit of a problem. Indeed, sometimes when I talk in public, I use some words from dialect, the dialect that I know, because it makes me better understood. So these discussions, and this is why I focus on terminology, this is why I wanted to tell you the difference between shoreline and coastline. This discussion, which may look not very technical, and indeed are not very technical, but are indeed important for communication. So it's not lost time, I mean. So here you see the erosion of the waves, which may create instability of the coastline. So one of the problems of the cliff, the coast, is indeed the stability of the coastline or shoreline. And the stability, because we are concerned about the erosion at the toe, at the basement by the waves. And indeed, if you look at this picture here, you understand that the concern is real. I wanted to put this picture precisely there because you see this big building. This is reality, it's not artificial intelligence. This big building, it's very close to the coastline. And this is a flat coast. The flat coast is typical of the lowlands, and it's characterized by a very gentle slope of the landward. And it is typical of the coastal areas that derive from filling of ancient gulfs or ancient basins by rivers, like Emilia-Romagna. Emilia-Romagna was a gulf that was filled up by the Po River, and therefore the result is that we have a lot of alluvial sediments. So the Emilia-Romagna region is characterized by alluvial sediments up to a depth of 300, 400 meters, gentle slope, and the beach is made by sand. In the cliff coast, typically you don't have sand beaches, or typically you have very small ones located at the mouth of rivers, and they are called pocket beaches. Pocket. So in the cliff coast, you don't have typically a very extended coastline made by sand, you have some small pockets. In the flat coast, typically you have a long displacement of sand along the shoreline. And what happens is that the river brings the sand, and it brings sand and not gravel because the slope of the river is very small. And then the sand is accumulated at the mouth of the river, the estuary, and then of the delta, and then displaced by coastal erosion along the shore sediment transport. Is displaced along the shoreline. So the sand brought by the Po River goes down until to Ancona and the Abruzzo region for the effect of the erosion. Keep in mind that the delta of the Po River in the past, when the excavation of sand in the Po River was lower, was advancing 70 meters per year. And there is somewhere, I have to remind where, I have an animated figure of the Po River. I think it could be found here in Wikimedia Commons. In Wikimedia Commons, let me see. Does it work or not? Okay. Oh, there must be an animated figure. Let me see. Okay, here it is. Okay, 1 second. Okay, this is an animated figure of the development of the Po River along the years, and it is indeed impressive. And it was about 70 meters per year. So you can understand that there is a displacement, because there is a natural tendency of the Adriatic Sea to displace this amount of sand that is brought by the Po River. Now it's advancing at a lower pace because of the excavation of sand in the course of the Po River. This process was concerning in 1500, in the 16th century. This advance was concerning Venice because they saw the Po River advancing so quickly that they were concerned by the blockage of the access to the Venice Lagoon by the Po River, and therefore what they did was to divert the Po River. The original course was this one that you see up here, was this one, which was moving towards Venice, and they diverted it, and the main course became this one, which I am, and they diverted it with the taglio of Porto Viro. Taglio means cut, Porto Viro cut. If you look on the web, there is a lot of information on the Porto Viro cut. It was really a huge project, which was financed by Venice, and I think it was terminated in 1576. And they basically translated, shifted the delta of the Po River southward. So this is the big picture, how the beach form. By the way, Wikimedia Commons is a source of open source figures. It's very, very interesting. I use many of these figures. Typically, these are the pictures and the figures that are used by Wikipedia, etc. I use many of them to be included in my lecture notes. Okay. Here we are. Okay, so the beaches, we will talk about beaches later because they are an extremely important environment because of the ecosystem, because of their resources, a lot of things. And it's a living environment. When you go over the beach, for instance, here on the Adriatic Sea, it seems like just sand. Actually, what you see is a beach that was worked to make it more accessible to tourists. If you go over a free beach and a beach that is not shaped, not taken care of, you understand that it's a living environment for vegetation and for animals, living species in general. Okay, another criteria of classification, and it is a genetic criteria, divides the beaches between emergent coast and submerged coasts. Emergent means that the coast was originated by lifting of the land or a decrease of sea level. Okay, typically it's lifting of the land. Submerged coasts are originated by land subsidence and or sea level rise. There is a difference because in one case there is a land that was once a land that now becomes covered by water. In the other case, there is a land that was once covered by water and now is raised to the level of the land. So the difference is clear in terms of shape of the resulting coastline. So, for instance, the emergent coasts typically are cliffed coasts. You see different classification, but related. And why they are cliffed? They are cliffed because typically the erosion of the sea is such that the sea bottom has a kind of a step after a while. And you can realize it if you go, for instance, here in the Adriatic Sea or in the ocean. If you look at the slope of the sea bottom, it is first a gentle slope and then there is a step. And this step marks basically the limit where the sediments brought by rivers arrive. So if you elevate the sea bottom, then the result is that typically the sea arrives against the step, and therefore you see a cliffed coast. Instead, the land, usually, when it is submerged, it is characterized by a different shape, and it's because the land is a gentle slope, usually, and therefore you are more likely to find a shoreline that is flat. Also here I have a figure. This is a very relevant example of submerged coast. It is the Chesapeake Bay in the central eastern United States. It is an environment that is extremely valuable for its ecosystem services, for the very interesting ecosystem there, and this is a submerged coast. And you can clearly recognize that indeed there was a river valley that was submerged. Okay. So there are several criteria for classification, and once again, classification are useful in order to gain an understanding. And my suggestion for you is when you have to deal with an engineering problem related to environment, try to first understand what is the genesis of this environment? what is the physics behind it, behind what you see, because this helps you to identify the solution. I will make several different examples. For instance, if you go over the coast of the Adriatic Sea, you immediately recognize that it's a flat coast. It's a coast that was created after filling an alluvial valley. And therefore, you immediately understand what may be the problem. The problem is to make sure that this equilibrium between sea erosion and the delivery of sediments by rivers, very fine sediments, is stable. It's a very delicate equilibrium because, as I said, we started excavating sand from the bed of the Po River in order to make highways, to make buildings, to support the economic boom that we had in the past century. And immediately we realized that this translated into erosion of the coast. Erosion, because if you decrease the delivery of sediments, in a situation where you previously had an equilibrium, and the equilibrium was the result of a secular compensation between river sediments, sea erosion. If you remove the river sediment, you end up with prevailing erosion, it's clear. And in fact, during these years, we started protecting the beaches of the Adriatic Sea with breakwaters, groins, we will see what they are. Because also at the same time, these beaches became very important for tourism. So if you go over a beach like this one, you realize immediately what can be the problem. And you look at the structures that are already there. If you see breakwater, it means that people were concerned by erosion. And you can understand if the breakwaters were effective. Or you can recognize areas where the breakwaters were not effective. And if you are able to gain immediate recognition of the drivers of this dynamic equilibrium, then you get an immediate recognition of the solutions, the possible solutions. Okay. Okay, about the importance of beaches, it's clear. I don't want to spend too many words on this. It's very clear because they are important for tourism, they are important also for protecting the land. So I give you an example. In the natural evolution of beaches, you have the coastline and then you have a dune, just after a while. Why there is a dune? Because the erosion of the sea is particularly relevant when you have strong waves. And the wave, what the wave do is move sediments, they move the sand, and when the velocity of the wave goes down, the sediment is released to the ground. So you have a strong wave approaching the sea, typically during the winter. And during the winter, this strong wave takes some sand, brings the sand landward, and then the wave stops and comes back. So when it stops, the sand is released, and the wave starts moving back. And in moving back, it takes some additional sand towards the sea. But the result is that the extreme distance reached by the waves, you have dominant deposition, and then you get a dune. A dune means an elevation. Okay? So let me get a picture of a dune. Let me get the picture of a dune somewhere here. There must be one. No, not here. Okay, perfect. Just 1 second. Maybe here then. The same page. Be patient because sometimes I get lost. It's not okay. You can see here. This is a dune. You see the vegetation. This is the dune. But I have another picture which is more interesting. No, it's not here. Okay, let's do like I did earlier. This is quicker. Wikimedia Commons, Dune. Okay. There are also wind dunes. I wanted to, okay, let me get this one. This is a dune. You see the sea, and then there is this kind of hill, landward, and this is another dune. Here. So the dune is a kind of protection of the land because it's an elevation that stops salt water. And an interesting thing of the dune is that given that it's elevated, it collects fresh water when it rains, and therefore vegetation can grow up. So you see that on the top of the dune there is vegetation. Behind the dune you have trees, because the area is protected. There is no salt water, there is no wind. On the top of the dune you still have wind, and therefore the vegetation is not very high. But just behind the dune you get trees. Because of the capability to collect fresh water, and you may say something like, you may think something like, but how it's possible to collect fresh water in just a few meters of sand? It's possible. There is a lot of water that is stored, fresh water, in these few meters of sand, such that the grass can grow, and the grass protects the dune. If you remove the grass, then wind erosion may destroy the dune. But if you have vegetation over the dune, it gets protected. You see the result of an equilibrium. And the dune is indeed a protection. And if you remove the dune, like we do here, because the dune is not good for tourism, because it's not really an enjoyable environment. It's steep, it's a lot of vegetation. So here they have a reduced space for beaches, they remove the dune. But if you remove the dune, then the beach gets more exposed to erosion, and the land becomes more exposed to this salt water, the spray of salt water, and therefore, you know, we have to manage this equilibrium. So, beaches have also an importance in terms of cultural heritage. Don't underestimate. The importance of cultural heritage means that people feel at home, feel at ease, feel comfortable if they can recognize the environment of their youth, if they can recognize in the people and in the landscape something that is familiar. And this is cultural heritage. And there are several examples where when you destroy cultural heritage, people get shocked. If you think about removing the Colosseum from Rome, I'm sure that besides the damage in terms of tourism, etc., it would be really shocking for people living there. Like, I mean, if you live in Ravenna, or you remove an important landmark, and the beaches indeed are proved to be also extremely important in terms of cultural heritage. Beaches are not our main focus here, but of course we have to also think about the equilibrium between the ports and the beaches. It's not easy because the port is something very impacting in terms of contaminants, in terms of pollution, in terms of smelling, bad smelling like naphtha, diesel, and also in terms of landscape. When you go to the beach, you don't get too close to the port. It's the usual recommendation. Stay away from there because the water is not so clean and there is a lot of noise. It's not nice. So we have to be concerned about this. This is extremely important. In Ravenna, this is a main reason of, not concern, but main reason of care. And they have a very important port here. It's extremely important. The course on offshore engineering was activated here because the port authority explicitly asked for professionals because they are very busy managing the sport. And they are also concerned, and one of the first things that they told me was, we want a professional, we want skills in contaminant removal, because we have a lot of contaminants here in the port. When we dredge the port, we get contaminated muds, and we don't know how to displace them, and we want experts. Yeah.
In the port of Rotterdam, aren't we going to have a problem of sedimentation?
With sedimentation, yes.
Sedimentation.
Sedimentation,
Because the slope is not something like, and there's a river that brings it in. So.
Yeah, it's indeed true. In fact, they need to dredge. Yeah, very often. They have continuous dredging. Continuous.
The port is not beneficial, as it seems.
Say again, you said the port is not?
It's not economically beneficial.
No, it's beneficial because if you look at the numbers are extremely relevant, but of course it means...
Also, when you are dredging all the time, then the port is not going to be operated for such a period.
Yeah, but keep in mind that dredging is usual in ports because you have to create a sheltered environment. So you have waves with sediments getting into the port. In the port, the dynamics of the water movement is lower, and then you get sedimentation everywhere in the port. I mean, not everywhere, but when you have a sandy coast, you get sedimentation. And the problem is precisely, it's not dredging. The problem and the cost is associated to contaminant removal. Because once that you dredge, you cannot release the material in the ocean. It's too expensive, and also the problem is that it's contaminated material. So you are not allowed to release it in the ocean. So you have to treat this material. I hope I will have time to make a lecture on this, and to treat this material and to displace it. And the problem that they have is that they don't have any area where to displace it. You cannot bring it too far because it's too costly, but they don't have any area. So what some solutions are, for instance, to make bricks to be used in constructions, or you have to find solutions. And it is a problem that they have here, but in many other harbors. If you look at the web, there are several information on dredging material, disposal of dredging material. But I mean, the port of Ravenna is a resource. The numbers are clear. It's extremely important. And some time ago, they were also thinking of collecting through Via della Seta. I don't know how to say in English, but there was an interest of China to make a direct connection. And by reopening the Seta route, I don't know how to say in English, I think you understand. But now the proposal, after the pandemics, unfortunately the pandemics changed many things, and unfortunately, and the proposal is not more considered, but it is a port that is extremely interesting. Okay, I talked about ecology of beaches, and I don't think we have to spend many words. The only thing that I recommend you to remind always, don't consider the beach as a dead environment. And there is a lot of life, even in the sand, close to the sea. And as people that were bitten by hidden fishes well know, you know, in the sand there are also hidden fishes or hidden animals that can bite you, and it is very painful. Okay. Another important thing, but we are not talking about it now, is saltwater intrusion. I want to mention it because it is the reason of a relevant concern in flat coastal areas. Saltwater intrusion means, if you look at the dark blue water, is salt water, which intrude, of course, into the underground. Intrudes because typically in flat beaches, they are formed by alluvial material, and therefore the salt water can intrude. The intrusion is favored by the fact that the salt water is heavier with respect to fresh water. So this originates the intrusion. And in the underground, typically, you have a confrontation between the fresh water and the salt water. And there is an interface which is depicted here as a sharp interface. Actually, it's never sharp. There is a dispersion zone. So you have a belt where you have the salinity that is progressively decreasing. And this confrontation zone is the result of water flowing from the land in the underground, of course downstream, and water intruding from the ocean, which is heavier. And you understand that the stronger winds, and therefore if you have a lot of flow from the land, then the salt water is pushed back into the ocean. If you have reduced flow from the land, the salt water in principle can intrude into the land forever if the permeability is large, like it is in flat beaches. What is the problem? The problem is that once the underground gets salted, it's almost impossible to recover. It takes a long time, a lot of money, a lot of everything. So the problem is that fresh water can be used for human purposes. So typically we have wells taking water from the underground, which serves to feed humans. Once it gets salted, it's no more usable because salt water is extremely unhealthy, extremely. Even if you assume salt water with a very reduced salinity, but above a given threshold for a long time, it brings several health problems. The density of the blood is increasing, there is an increasing risk of ictus, and etc. And this is why people know very well that there is a limit to salinity for drinkable water. The problem of saltwater intrusion is a real problem because if you take too much fresh water from the underground, of course, you favor the saltwater intrusion. And sea level rise is, of course, pushing saltwater intrusion landward. And it's possible to demonstrate that even a small increase of sea level, like 5 centimeters, cause an increase of intrusion for several meters. And this is actually the most relevant problem of sea level rise due to global warming. Sea level rise due to global warming is not a huge amount. In the past 200 years is about 15 centimeters, 15 to 20, it depends on the zone. So it's not really a large amount, it's something like this. But in terms of saltwater intrusion, it may imply a larger intrusion for like 20 centimeters, 20 meters of more saltwater intrusion. There is an order of magnitude of difference. So we don't discuss saltwater intrusion here. Just be aware that this is a real problem. There are several interventions that are made for contrasting saltwater intrusion, including cutoff walls. Cutoff walls means that you create a kind of cutoff in the underground. You go down for meters and meters and meters in order to avoid saltwater intrusion. Okay. These processes are studied by a branch of science which is called coastal hydrodynamics and morphodynamics. We will talk a little bit about it, not much, but yeah, a little bit, because it is really something that is relevant. It gives you the theory underlying the study of erosion, sedimentation, and the study of the interaction between the port area, the harbor, and the beach. Let me see. I would, just 1 second. I go back to the web page because I think I am almost done. Yeah, I am almost done. I am done with this. So the PowerPoint moves forward with some, no, it's just one slide, but I don't think we need to talk about this slide now. This slide was just aimed at remembering some terminology, but I think that you don't need to be remembered. But so when we talk about waves, I think you are already familiar with the wavelength, what is the wave crest, what is the wave through, and you see the terms here, and what is the wave frequency and the wave period. In any case, Professor Archetti, if not yet done, will tell you. I think you already had a course with Professor Archetti, yeah, okay. In fact, we agreed that she's talking about wave dynamics. Okay, good. Do you have any question so far? And while you think of questions, I want to say a few words about ports, our main interest. First of all, here you see a reference to an interesting description of the social and commercial values of ports. And here I open the part of this open book where it is discussed the economic value of ports. It is indeed extremely relevant, as you know. And for instance, if you look at the port of Genova here, and you see at the numbers are impressive. They are here. Just 1 second. Okay. So 6,000 docks here, and about 4,000 day cars and trucks in, out, about 3,000 day trains in, out. Amazing, if you think every day 3,000 trains. This means that when you plan the development of a port, there are a lot of implications in terms of transportation, in terms of commercial activities, in terms of pollution, environmental impact. It's really a huge thing, and it has always been, the ports have always been important nodes for human activities, different types of human activities, and they still remain important nodes. Here there is a reference on ancient port, and there is a Wikipedia page dedicated to historical ports, and basically there is an impressive list of ports that played for ancient civilization a key role. And if you look at historical ports, you notice that some of them are located over the land, meaning that there were periods where the sea level changed a lot, or the sea level changed, which may be due also the change to a movement of the land. But I mean, today we are concerned by sea level rise and the adjustment that we need to make at the coastline as a consequence. But if you think at the past glaciations, which terminated not a long time ago, 11,000 years ago, you may think it's a long time, but in geologic terms, it's nothing. The sea level was 120 meters lower, 120 meters. Now we are talking of sea level rise due to global warming of about 20 centimeters, as I said. So in the past we had massive changes. In the past the changes were probably originated by natural processes and not human activity. Today it's very likely that the sea level rise is caused by human activities. CO2 emission, global warming is very likely to be caused by, at least in part, according to a definition by National Geographic, at least in part, humans are to blame for the current global warming and therefore for these 20 centimeters. But there are also natural processes that are having an influence, natural processes that we don't know completely. So we are still debating on the reasons for glaciations. And keep in mind that we are still in a glacial period. There were periods without ice over the poles. Ice over the poles were there over the Earth only during glaciations, and we are still in the tail of a glaciation. And we cannot predict what's going on in the future. The fact that we are in the tail of a glaciation doesn't mean that we can get again into a glaciation. So there are also natural processes that are playing a key role. Of course, we have also to be concerned about timing, because if changes occur in a long time, humans adapt. If changes occur in a short time, humans fight and get into wars, for obvious reasons. Because the natural way of reaction of the humans to changes in the environment is to move, migration. And humans indeed came to Europe from Australia, from Africa, because in the past Europe was not an easy place to live. Now Europe is an easy place, Africa is no more an easy place, and therefore humans are moving. And if the movement is, in the course of centuries, we adapt. If the movement is in the course of years, we don't adapt because it's impossible. The societal organization, the cultural organization needs time to adapt. So also timing is the pace of change is concerning, but just let's keep in mind that change is the norm, is not an exception. Change is the norm, and then, of course, we have to find solutions. Okay, and so the importance of ports is really, cannot be understated. And in Italy, if you look at the port of Genova and also the port of Naples, and I think Ravenna is, I don't remember if it is number 3 or number 5 in Italy in terms of traffic in the port. Ravenna has a very important port. This is the main reason why we are concerned here about offshore engineering and harbor engineering. Okay, I think we can move, let me see, just 1 second before we move forward. There was a video which I wanted to show you, just 1 second, very short one. Okay. This is one, just 1 second video. Okay, just want to show you this video is linked. We are not watching it entirely. It's 5 minutes, I think, but 2 minutes actually. And it is interesting because it explains a project to restore Okay, let me just show you, and if you are interested, you can watch it by yourself. Let me just show you a couple of interesting things I want to make. Just 1 second. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. You see here, this is a beach protection against erosion, and you see the effect behind this breakwater. It is a particular type of breakwater because breakwater by definition should be not connected to the beach. But actually when you build a breakwater, you limit erosion, and then there might be the rise of a deposition of sand that creates this connection. And you see that the effect is clear, and it is indeed very relevant. This is a successful restoration. And it is also successful if you look at the vegetation, and you can see some vegetation even here with an elevation of the sand of few centimeters. And it is just enough, a little bit of water to create vegetation. Looking at the successful operations is extremely important in order to get guidance for your design. Because, as I said here, the basis for the design is empirical. You don't have a strict theory driving you what is the distance at which to put the breakwater, what is the optimal extension of the breakwater. And in order to get guidance in your assessment, of course you have some empirical relationship, but in order to confirm them, to get guidance, it is the recommendation, the best recommendation that I can give to you is to look around and look at successful operations, successful interventions in similar environment. So for instance, for the Adriatic Sea, what I usually do is try to look along the coast of the same sea, so with similar waves, and see what they have done there, and see where they succeeded and did not succeed. The good thing of these interventions is that they can be reshaped. So the breakwater is not something that once done, there is no solution to adapt it. You can adapt the breakwater. You can also remove it and displace it in a different position. So basically, it is a discipline that must be guided by experiments. So for this reason, I often draw your attention on these videos and pictures. It is indeed a very good guidance. Today we have a lot of information over the web. We have to take the best advantage from it. Okay, now let me just start the discussion of the next lecture. And let me just go even here, the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, good. And let me get at hand also the web page. Otherwise, I don't get. Okay, let me close this. And here we are. So what are we talking about here? About planning and environmental impact. The next step, this is still a descriptive lecture. The next step will be forcing estimation, which is technical, okay? So, first thing, we already said that ports plays an essential key role for many faces of human activities, many like commerce, like tourism, etc. And therefore, their design or their adaptation, because today it is more frequent request for adaptation of a port to new traffic, to new conditions, to new environmental conditions, rather than new projects. And this is typical not only of ports, of several infrastructures, because in the past century we equipped our world with a lot of infrastructures, water supply systems, energy systems, dams, ports, beach recovery structures, and now after 100 years, these structures need adaptation. So a current topic in my field is adaptation of water supply system, for instance, adaptation of bridges. You know that adaptation recovery of bridges. You know that in Italy we have an incredible amount of bridges, and now we have the problem of their recovery, of their safety after, for some bridges, 50 years, 70 years, and for most of the bridges we don't have anymore any design project. We have lost the documents. And the same for ports. Sometimes we don't know the depth of the foundations. So recovery adaptation is indeed the most frequent request. And these operations, design and adaptation, need to be supported by planning and consultation, careful planning and consultation with stakeholders, with the relevant authorities. And there is also the important step of getting the regulations for different type of interventions. There are a lot of regulations conditioning your design, and these legal aspects are not easy to explore, especially in an international context. So in this lecture, the aim is to discuss what are the most important steps in planning the design of a new port or the adaptation of an existing port. Keep in mind that many ports around the world have the problem of limited insufficient space because of the development of the traffic, because of the global socio-economic evolution. And therefore, another extremely important discipline becomes the optimization of the use of the port or port logistics. We will not talk explicitly about port logistics, but keep in mind that it's a discipline that is gaining a lot of attention. Logistics means, for instance, how to load the ships in the optimal way to optimize their safety and to optimize the carrying capacity. So logistics is indeed a very important implication. And then there is the step of the load estimation for the berths. The berths are the structure in a port where the ships are moored, anchored. Okay, and the berths may have different shapes, they can be in the form of a wharf or a pier. The wharf is a berth that is aligned with the coastline. The pier is protruding into the sea. And therefore, you have to study, depending on the state of the sea, the currents, the conditions of the sea, and the available space, we have to identify the best solution for the berths. And keep in mind that the berths are exposed to a lot of loads, to different loads that we have to estimate, depending on the sea conditions, on the land conditions, and depending on the traffic, on the behavior of the traffic. Let me just make a check if I'm not forgetting anything. Okay, an interesting thing, just for your information. this article here, the 10 most expensive port construction projects in 2022. And to clarify, I mean, the importance of these projects. And these are ordered in increasing cost, or let's say, they are starting from the 10th more cheap, okay? So Namib Bay integrated development in Angola and 650 millions. And this is a picture here. This is a wharf, okay? Let's move forward. Okay. Abu Qir container terminal in Egypt, 730 millions. This is a pier, okay, very large one, and you see the containers here. Colombo West International Terminal in Sri Lanka, almost 800 millions. Look at the shape, it's interesting to get already an idea, and look at the size of these boats, which can be up to 300 meters long, okay? These are, I think, a bit shorter, but still very long. This is Mardi Salt and Potash Plant, Australia, 890. It's a plant for processing salt and sulfate of potash, and they needed also access to the sea. CMA Terminals, Khalifa Port, 900 millions. A bit interesting, the shape. And you see that what they created here is a piece of land intruding into the ocean, and in order to create this piece of land, you have to build walls around, and the walls can be built with natural material or with concrete, and then fill with material inside, typically is soil material, in order to get a land indeed intruding, and you have to intrude into the ocean until you reach the necessary depth with respect to the sea bottom. And for some ships, the depth must be very large. Okay, this is Larnaca Port and Marina Development in Cyprus, 1.4 billions. You see that what they created here is a sheltered environment through artificial structures filled with soils, with material. This is the Kampot Logistic and Multipurpose Ports in Cambodia, 1.5 billions. Same thing here. They built a structure protruding into the ocean. This is in Australia, Port Headland, Inner Harbour, and 2 billions. This is Pedernales Tourism Development in Dominican Republic, 2.3 billions. It's amazing indeed. This is mainly for tourism. And then this is over this 5 billions, Seine North Europe Canal in France. This is actually a canal which was equipped with a lot of ports, and it's a navigable canal. It's well known in France, and because it was built in order to create a connection between the inner land and the ocean. Okay, this is, let me just go back. Here, I have to go back from scratch. Give me 1 second. We are almost closing. Okay. Another interesting link, I'm not opening it, is this one to the World Port Sustainability Program of the International Association of Ports and Harbors. It's an international association providing guidelines for port design. Okay, I think we can stop here for today. Next Wednesday, my plan is to dedicate 2 hours to continue this discussion in 2 hours, introducing some coding. If you can bring something that allows you to code in personal computer or I think also the iPad, as I said. If you want to make a check, we will start with this software, and you can see if you can install it on your iPad. The software, go to a Google page, and then just look for R project, and you get the first link. It's free, and you can see the download here. You can look at the download, and you can look also on the iPad on the Google Store if it's available. I never tried. Maybe it's available. Let me see. R project. Google R project app. Yeah, R apps to Google Play. So there should be to Google Play. Yeah. It is not free. Strange. I think it can be found also for free. And if you can manage to get it, it's better. We will start with this one. It's very similar to MATLAB, to give you an idea. Okay, good. Do you have any question? Everything is fine. If you have anything to suggest to me to improve, I hope the English is reasonably okay. But if you have any suggestion, you can also send an email, okay? If I speak too fast, if I speak too slow, if I am too trivial, if I am too complicated, just let me know, okay? Important to get your feedback. Thanks.